So in order to talk about bonds, you need to have a view on the economy. You need to have a view about macro, because of course rates is this unique factor that is most decisive when looking at the valuation of a fixed income instrument. But you also need to do bottom-up analysis, right? Like you need to be familiarized with what the company does the same way as an equity investor would do, understand intimately the business model, the sector it operates in, whether it has a moat or not, and ultimately try to figure out if the company has enough cash or will it generate enough liquidity over the future in order to face its outstanding obligations. So that's something that I always genuinely found incredibly interesting about bonds. On top of that, you have multiple layers to analyze debt instruments. Each of them is a completely different world. When you think about a company like Apple, like it has a couple of stocks listed in a couple of exchanges, but it has multiple bonds outstanding. The extreme case, of course, is financials. When you look at banks, a European bank would have hundreds, if not thousands, of bonds outstanding, and each of them ranks in a different part of the capital structure, and each of them has different features, different coupons, different maturities, different covenants. And as a fixed income advisor, and everyone working in bonds really has to look at each specific icing to understand the intricacies of each of these instruments. And I thought that always has been really, really cool. Yeah, talking about the layers that I was alluding to. So you have all these different ways of looking at bonds too. In equity land, you have fundamental analysis, technical analysis. Well, we also have that. We look at issues from the fundamental standpoint. We have technical analysis. In our side of the market, we use mostly relative value analysis. We compare the bond with its existing curve and cap structure against the cap structure and curves of peers. And it's just like multidimensional. There's so many layers to it. There's no way of simplifying it. And that's why a lot of people say that bond investors tend to have a very comprehensive view of the world, and I tend to agree. You need to have, you need to have a view from the top. You need to have a view from the bottom, and I guess that's what makes it beautiful.
Welcome to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest topic of all, money. How to make it, save it, keep it. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question, what it means to live a rich life beyond money. My guests share their practices, principles, and evergreen wisdom. I'm your host, Bogumil, author, TEDx speaker, and investment advisor to wealth creators with patient capital and an infinite investment horizon. I work with families and individuals who aspire to grow wealth over a lifetime and generations through disciplined, thoughtful investments in durable quality businesses, while giving money meaning. Join me on this quest to unearth and share the wisdom of the ages. Let me share with you the podcast program disclosure statement. Blue Infinitas Capital LLC is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by the firm's employees and podcast guests on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Blue Infinitas Capital. All the statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. The information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance. None of what you're about to hear is investment advice. I'm talking today to a good friend, Ignacio Ramirez Moreno, CFA, a fixed income advisor at Pictet Wealth Management in Geneva, host of the Blunt Dollar podcast, and Switzerland's #1 LinkedIn financial markets creator, who has earned over 10 million views by turning bonds, bank runs, and market risk into viral stories with raw honesty and a healthy dose of humor. How are you? Nice to see you.
Very good to see you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna introduce you now because
Yes.
this is a double episode. So on my side, my guest is Bogumil Baranovsky, the founder of Blue Infinitus Capital, someone who has built a career around a pretty rare combo in finance, if you ask me, which is long-term thinking, patient capital, and actually trying to give money some meaning beyond just bigger numbers on a screen. The host of this wonderful podcast too, Talking Billions, big fan over here. Very excited about this show. I've been following you for a while, and I suggest we get things going.
Let's do it. First question, you know it. I want to hear more about the early days, childhood upbringing. What was it like becoming Ignacio?
So I'm originally from Spain, from Madrid, but I left Spain very early on because my mom was working at the European Commission. So I grew up in Belgium, actually, in Brussels. Wonderful city, loads of fun. I went to the European school there, so I had friends from all over the world, and stayed there until 18. After that, I decided to go back to Spain for my university studies. It's funny because when you spend a lot of time abroad, some people become very patriotic and some people forget their home nation. In my case, I became like very patriotic. I absolutely wanted to go back to Spain and make some friends over there. So I went back there to start my college degree. I did business administration and management. I did 2 years in Madrid, then a couple of exchange programs, one in the UK at Warwick University, another at Berkeley in University of California. And then once I finished my degree, I did my master's program at the Copenhagen Business School with an exchange in Stockholm. So I really leveraged the exchange system as much as possible. I thought that's something incredibly interesting and a great opportunity available to any student that has good grades. And it was, it was great. And I really had a blast. And it's something that I would definitely recommend to anyone. But what about you? Tell us a bit about your childhood. You're originally from Poland, right?
Yes. I love hearing your story. I mean, you lived in so many places. We'll come back to it, but there is a question that comes up, where is home? And many places can feel like home, and I think that's how I feel about it. I was born in Poland. I went to schools around Europe, including Brussels. I spent a year in Brussels, and I have fond memories. A lot of good friends, and just, I love the city, taking trains around Belgium, going to the coast, seeing Antwerp and Bruges. Just a beautiful country. And I picked up a book, One Up on Wall Street, in Brussels itself. I was studying business, economics, finance, accounting, but I couldn't really connect it all and make sense out of it. What am I going to do with it? And I didn't want to overly specialize. And the book by Peter Lynch told me that stocks are small pieces of businesses. And a light bulb went off. I made up my mind. I went to grad school in Paris, Sciences Po, which is a political science school with ambitions to be a business school as well in many ways. A wonderful kind of dual experience, understanding the macro and understanding the businesses at the same time. Came to New York, spent most of my adult life in New York working for an investment firm. And I was connecting the dots, and we'll talk more about it, but I was very fortunate to work with wonderful mentors who were stewards of capital for wealthy families over many generations. And I realized that stock picking aspect of what got me interested expanded so much more beyond it. And we'll talk more about it. Many lifetimes of managing family wealth. But I'll mention one thing that you might be curious about. I got to see the last decade of communist Poland, which left a lasting mark on my imagination. So the country went from a frozen state to a free market economy. And I was just very curious how the world works. How come the same country could not produce the basics and then overnight became a success story? And to this day, 35 years later, there's a booming economy and catching up in terms of purchasing power with Japan.
Would you ever see yourself going back over there to continue your business?
Well, it's very U.S. focused, my business. So I manage money for mostly U.S. based families or families with ties to the U.S. one way or the other. And I love the U.S. stock market. It's big, it's deep, it's diversified, and all the new businesses get listed here. I love visiting Poland, and I have family there, and I enjoy going back. But for this particular pursuit, unless I was working remotely in a sense, the US feels like home for my business and my clients and their assets.
So tell us a bit about your business. Why did you decide to launch it, and why did you choose the name Blue Infinitas?
I love sailing and I love flying, and I have this image of a blue horizon. You're flying into something unknown, something exciting. And I feel like the investing journey can feel that way very often. And infinitas from Latin, which happens to be a dead language, no longer used really, now as a spoken language at least. So it bonds the past, the history of the families I work with the future. Infinitas, infinity, open-ended opportunity. We might talk about the infinite games that you want to continue to play, and managing a family fortune is such a game. So I wanted to have this open-ended horizon of opportunity and an infinite time horizon to deploy capital for families when you think beyond your lifetime. But that's been the journey, and I got to serve a handful of families over the years, and a handful of them are here with me within Blue Infinitas, and a few more are joining, and I'm very excited to be able to serve them, managing my own capital, their capital along with them, and be a part of their incredible journey of growing capital, preserving it, but also building a legacy for the generations to come. You are based in Switzerland, my friend, and I think we can learn a lot from the Swiss. When you land in Zurich, a lot of the words on all the posters are about eternity, infinity, and it's watches, but also it's business. So I'm very curious about your experience. You're fully immersed in the Swiss mindset of managing money. Tell me what it's like, and tell me more about what you do.
Absolutely. And who knows, you might end up in Switzerland managing money. But of course, like Switzerland is the quintessential place of wealth management, right? Like when you think about private banking, some of the biggest names are here. I arrived a little bit by coincidence. So I did a graduate program for HSBC back in 2012. They asked me, where do I want to go? I said Hong Kong, actually, but they said, no, we cannot send you to Hong Kong because you don't speak any Asian language. It has to be either Mexico City or Miami. And I said, okay, Mexico City. And a couple of days before leaving, they told me, hey, there's been a problem with your visa. We're not sending you to Mexico anymore. We're sending you to Geneva. And I was like, okay. And fast forward 14, 15 years, and still here I am, absolutely in love with the place. I think it's one of those countries, and Geneva specifically, one of those cities that the more time passes, the more you come to appreciate it. I started working at the fixed income advisory desk just after finishing my graduate program. Spent roughly 4 years at HSBC, then did a short stint at BNP Paribas, almost of 3 years, also in the fixed income advisory desk. And since 2018, I've been at Pictet Wealth Management, one of the largest wealth managers in Switzerland, of course, still working as a fixed income advisor, covering the most beautiful of asset classes, which is bonds, of course.
I'll ask you about
it. And having a lot of fun.
I have so many questions, but kind of two, three groups. One, you've lived in 8 countries. You made many stops. What was it like going from a place to a place? And we'll come back to Switzerland in a second, but completely new friends, new environment. What was it like? I mean, I changed places many times, but I don't think I've done it 8 times. I think you have.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been, a source of inspiration and very energizing to meet different people, get different perspectives about the world and life. And it's always that I always truly enjoyed. And hence why I was actively pursuing those exchange programs. I alluding to before. Of course, at some point, you have to settle somewhere. And that's when I said, okay, I'm going to try to find a base now. And once I started working, I didn't move anymore, really. I have been in the same place for a decade and a half now. But I think it's one of the greatest things that one can do. Just go somewhere else, get out of your comfort zone, meet new people, get exposed to new ideas, visit new places, and just seeing the world through the lens of other people. I've always found it incredibly rewarding, interesting, and I'm very blessed now to have friends all around the world. And I would definitely recommend everyone to travel if they can. Of course, it takes a special type of mindset, but it also forces you to be a little bit more extrovert. Get out there, feel a bit more comfortable in these type of uncharted territories. And quite frankly, on my side, I really enjoy being exposed to refreshing new ideas and settings. And yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe in the future I get the opportunity and the chance to travel even further. But I'm very thankful and very blessed about the journey I've had so far. And yeah, I can only thank also my family, my parents for providing me with the opportunity to travel so much, particularly during my formative years.
When you see the bigger world, it's hard to unsee it. I think what I grew to appreciate is how much we're all alike, but at the same time we have different perspectives. And even this podcast, talking to hundreds of people around the globe, it sharpens my vision. And I realize there are a lot of blind spots that develop over time. And it's nice to talk to somebody that's looking at the world from a different place. I have
just one question, because this is both ways, man.
Yes,
you're not going to be asking all the questions. So yeah, tell us a bit about the show, because I mean you've done hundreds of episodes. I don't think there's been any other show in the space like that we occupy, which is like interviewing finance professionals in kind of a casual setting that has been so prolific as you. Why did you start this thing, and why are you still going? I mean, is there anyone in the industry you haven't talked to yet?
All good questions. So I have to tell you that it came about over 3 years ago, and my wife and I were on a walk in the park, and I told her that I'd like to record some of the conversations I'm already having with people that have an influence on me, an impact, mentors or friends in the business. And I said that I'm having those conversations, and if you take away the intimate details, of course, the names and everything, the essence of the conversation, I think, belongs in more households. And I think it can empower more people to at least ask better questions, whether when they're managing money on their own or if they're sitting down with a professional. I just wanted them to feel better prepared, the same way I feel like my clients and their kids interacting with me are more and more prepared to answer some big questions that they might be facing. 6 episodes, that was my goal. Ignacio, 6 episodes. And I recorded 6 episodes. And
why 6?
I had 6 people in mind at the time, and some of them could join me. Okay. Some of them wanted to remain very private. They told me they'll buy me dinner anytime, but they don't want to be recorded, which has happened since many times too, when people tell me I'll buy you dinner, but I don't want to be recorded. And I said, I respect that. I'll see you next time. We'll have dinner. And so 6 was the number in mind. And then it started to grow. People told me, I really like the format. How about you talk to this person and that person? And I reconnected with a lot of people that I knew from different events and conferences and different introductions. And I connected with more people that I've never met before. And it grew to 200 episodes. And it's kind of like a snowball, kind of like in investing. Buffett cannot stop his snowball anymore. I think that's something we don't talk about. Buffett has been rolling the snowball for a long time, but he can't really say, I don't want it to grow anymore. So I think there's a moment where I could obviously stop and pause, but I'm getting too many wonderful emails from listeners that tell me, don't stop. And I have this pipeline of people that would like to sit down and talk. And I've been thinking about how I'm trusting my instincts and intuition in terms of who I would like to talk to. And the format of the podcast is not for the audience to know absolutely everything about my guest, but to walk away with a feeling that You know what? I know Ignacio. I still have many questions for him, but I know him. I know what he stands for. I know who he is. I know who he wants to show up as in the world. So that's what this conversation model has become. I kind of see it kind of like a tea room at a hotel, and you're walking past the door, you crack open the door, and you see there's two people talking by the fireplace, and you listen a little bit and you realize, I do want to stay for the whole hour and listen to them, or I'll come next week. I see it as this kind of open door experience. Grab a chair, sit down, listen, and you can be
It's
a part.
very intimate, right?
That's the goal, yes. What about you? You've been doing it for a bit, and you grew this incredible content creation model, and you've been attracting incredible numbers of views. You've been doing some of it daily, if I know correctly. Tell me, why did you start, and where did it take you?
Yeah, so there's two layers to that question. One is, I guess, LinkedIn, and the other one is the podcast. So maybe I'll start with LinkedIn. I started out of frustration, to be honest. And the story I always like to give is roughly 3 years ago, like probably around the same dates when you were walking with your wife around the park. I was invited with my wife to a dinner party at a friend's place, and it was one of those dinner parties where there's people around the table and some others that you've never met before. So you go around the table and everyone starts sharing their story and saying what they do in life and so on. Comes my turn and they say, "Hey, Nacho, what do you do?" And I say, "I'm a fixed income advisor." And I try to spice up my speech talking a bit about Venezuela and Brazil and China, but after approximately 20 seconds, everyone is falling asleep. And after me, my wife goes and they ask her, "What do you do?" And she's like, "I'm an art advisor." And of course, everyone gets incredibly excited. Everyone has sparkle in their eyes, and we start talking about art for 2 hours, and it's genuinely a fascinating topic. And on the way home, we start talking, and I tell her, "How is it possible that whenever you say what you do, everyone gets so excited, and whenever I say what I do, everyone gets so bored?" And I arrived to the conclusion that it was due to the fact that finance can be a little bit intimidating. It's not the sexiest of topics. It's full of jargon. Some people find it outright boring. And I was not really, satisfied with that, because you know it as well as me, finance is the most fascinating topic in the world. Financial markets touch upon everything: economics, politics, psychology, you name it. It has so many levels and layers. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try to talk about markets the way I'd like them to be explained to me if I was not working in a bank. Like, I'm going to add more color to the words I use and the imagery I craft. And and fast forward 3 years, and here I am still doing it. And the reason why I'm still doing it is obviously not the same one as why I started. So it's not frustration, but it's more, I guess, because of the opportunity and the optionality it provides. Like, I don't think we would be talking today if it wasn't for this channel, right? And for what social media provides. And at the end of the day, like, after posting so much, I started to exchange with a lot of people online, like you did. And I realized something. I realized that the finance industry is made out of wonderful folks, incredibly interesting individuals. And in some way, what I'm trying to do with my posts and my podcast is what you are trying to do with your show, which is advocate for the finance profession, right? Like, I think a lot of people, when they think about finance professionals, they think about Gordon Gekko, being very blunt and not particularly nice. But we are not all Gordon Geckos. There's genuinely nice people out there, and I was really surprised, about the conversations I started having. Whenever I reached out to people would start picking up the phone and spend some time talking to you. And yeah, it's been an incredible source of satisfaction. You know, the people, the friendships I've made along the way. On top of course, all the intel that you gather. You know, of course, social media can be a dangerous tool if not used appropriately. It can be very addictive. It adds a lot of noise and all of that. But at the same time, there's also an incredible amount of super valuable content and information. And if you manage to filter out the really relevant content for you, then it can be a fantastic tool. So that's why I started. That's why I'm still posting. I post daily. I actually had more views than what you said. Last year, I had close to 20 million views.
Incredible.
On LinkedIn, although, you know, those are vanity metrics and it changes all the time. Right now, the algorithm is a lot harder. So I'm sure this year everyone is going to get less views than last year. But it's just fun, you know, and it's just, you know, it's I prefer to do that than to watch Netflix. So it's something I like to spend my time on, and truly I enjoy. And then, so that's for LinkedIn. Then for the podcast, a bit like you, I started again talking to so many people, having conversations behind, you know, closed doors, and at some point I realized, wow, you know, this person is so interesting. This person has fantastic insights that I'd like to share with the world. Why don't I try to launch something? Of course, I was a little bit scared at the beginning, not scared, but intimidated, because doing podcasts is a whole different level of complexity compared to just posting on LinkedIn or Twitter or whichever platform you use. There's a lot more logistics involved into it. It requires a lot more work, but at the same time, there's virtually no other setup that allows you to have these intimate conversations that we were alluding to, right? Like for an hour, you can sit down with someone. Okay, today it's a bit of a special episode because we're going back and forth, but usually it's just, in my podcast, in my case, it's me asking questions to my guests. I add a few comments here and there, but it's mostly me asking questions. And there's virtually no other setup that allows me to sit down with these super interesting people and fire questions at them for an hour and them gladly answering them. And I think it's just fantastic. And what's more is that a lot of the people I interview then become friends, right? Because after spending 1 hour in this intimate setting,
yes,
you feel like you know the person in some way, and you can go back to her or to him and exchange emails. And I think it's a fantastic way of networking, of learning from others, and quite frankly, it's a lot of fun. So again, I'd recommend everyone to launch a podcast if they can, even though it's a lot of work and the space is a little bit crowded. Nowadays, everyone is launching podcasts. But it's truly a great experience if you like talking to people. What do you think?
No, I second everything you say. There's something unique about this setup, that it's one-on-one, that it's uninterrupted, 30 minutes or an hour. I've been playing with the length of it, but I realized that I can't replicate this space, this moment outside. So even the people that I know, that I see in person, if you have a coffee or lunch or dinner, you get interrupted every few minutes in most places. And you're in the middle of a thought and they're asking about the specials, or if you want water, or if you want bread. I don't know. There's always a reason to interrupt a conversation. And this 1 hour where you and I give each other 100% presence and attention, which I think it's a rare thing and a luxury and a privilege in today's world, where I feel like every 5 minutes we're interrupted by something unique happens. And I think we can capture it with this medium. I also want to mention something that you pointed out, and I describe as kind of a sphere, a surface. So if you're learning in public, if you're revealing a bit more about yourself, the sphere out there, this intangible visual, I have a visual of a sphere that somebody can touch. Somebody can touch the story that you love Spain and you would like to live in Spain at some point. Somebody else will touch your experience living abroad. Somebody else will talk about fixed income. But you're expanding the sphere that people can interact with. And I don't think I fully appreciated when I launched it. I've been writing articles for over 10 years and now they're on Substack. But I feel like articles, as much as I enjoy writing them, they don't have the same phenomenon that a podcast has. A podcast is much more intimate. I feel like they can coexist, the two media. But what you can do within that hour talking to somebody, I think it's very hard to capture and accomplish with an article. People actually really get to know you and your guests. And I think it's incredibly important in a world where we live now, where it's more digital, more AI generated, and we don't really know who is replying to us. Is it a machine or a person?
So what's the overlap between your podcast audience, your Substack audience, your LinkedIn audience? Because obviously we've seen a lot of people now starting to migrate out of LinkedIn and launching Substacks. I think you were already doing that before this whole trend. But do you feel you have the same audience, or is it completely different groups?
I think it overlaps actually with LinkedIn. I remember signing up to LinkedIn when I was a graduate student in Paris, and I think I was in the first 1 million LinkedIn users, if I remember correctly. But LinkedIn, I think, garnered a whole different level of attention and activity in the last 5 years, maybe 3 years, that I haven't seen before, and I appreciate it. I think they are different groups, but they're overlaps. So LinkedIn, it's my professional world, people that I know professionally. Many of them are former or future guests on Talking Billions too, and people that I see at conferences. So it's more professional. Substack is more open-ended. There are people that are just curious about money, investing, family wealth, the topics that I bring up. And I do post the episodes on Substack, but they are also available on Apple and Spotify and YouTube, wherever people feel comfortable finding them. So the Substack is kind of a reminder that the new episode came out. They're ideas that come to me in these conversations when I'm talking to you or other guests, and they become sometimes articles or building blocks of an article. Like somebody points out something to me that I haven't thought about in a while or ever, and it's a little seed that gets planted. So I feel like it all feeds on itself between the podcast and the Substack. LinkedIn is just a way to say hello to a lot of people and mention, look, there's a new article that came out or a new podcast episode that came out. But they all happily coexist, and I'm grateful that we have them available to us.
Yeah, 100%. And focusing on the podcast, maybe, I mean, you have a lot more experience than me. One of the things that I find the hardest when I'm preparing my interviews is trying to figure out what's a good question. And whenever I'm in an interview and someone says, good question, like my inner me is like, yeah, like I did a good job there. It's always cool. What have you learned about crafting questions over these years? Can you share a moment where, a question change the entire direction of a conversation, or even like your way of looking at the world or your investing philosophy, and what's your process really through figuring out what to ask to each of your guests?
I think big picture idea is that having a podcast makes me a better investor. I think that's the simplest way to start this answer for you, that I think it just allows me to always be learning, always challenge my assumptions, and always be open to new ideas, and have this enormous world in front of me. Instead of just 8 or 10 people in a conference room, I have hundreds or maybe thousands that are listening and will react to the content. Now, the process has evolved and changed because it's been 3 years, and I feel like if you want to do something over a long period of time, whether it's investing or running a podcast, for me at least, you have to create a process, a workflow that's repeatable. And initially I was doing a lot in a very inefficient way, and I couldn't catch up with the volume. And I had to have, steps and processes and scheduling and kind of a template for each episode, what will be there. But the questions, I think, are the essence of what's happening. And I do have a framework, the same way I shared with you some questions that came to mind reading about you. If people have a book, that's a great head start for me to at least focus on some aspects. But I don't want to just talk about the book. I want to talk about the person that wrote the book, which gets tricky. But I do have to tell you that the best questions came to me in the conversation itself. I was recording with someone yesterday, and I'll share with you that we stopped recording. And I feel like there are questions still lingering. So we started talking, and I told him, listen, I feel like you had one more thing you wanted to say. Is this the thing you want to talk about? And he says, yes, it's not in the book, but I want to talk about it. I said, pause. I'll press record, and I'll find a creative way to include it in the episode. So we added 3 more minutes. His observations about a certain philosophy. I don't want to give too much away. It's Peter Gustafsson that wrote a book about Warren Buffett recently that's about to come out or coming out as we speak. But there's this 3-4 minutes that we recorded after we stopped recording. And they, I think, will add a lot of value to the audience. So just as a little teaser, I'll mention it. But there are moments where I don't want to miss that. And it happened to me that people tell me the best of the best after I stop recording. What's your experience?
Well, quite frankly, I'm still learning, still trying to figure it out. I'm maybe less of an improviser like you. I've always been a big believer in prep, so I prepare a lot for each of these conversations. I guess people don't realize the amount of work that goes behind these things. It's of course at some point you get comfortable, but it's not easy to have a conversation flowing for an hour straight and make it interesting, right? So in my case, like, I try to prepare as much as possible in advance. So what I do is, obviously the first step for me, like you, is try to find out whatever I can find about the person. If there's a book, that's a fantastic source of information. If there's other podcasts, I would listen to them, as many as possible. In your case, it's impossible to listen to all your podcasts because there's so many. But I was already a listener of your show before I launched my podcast, so that definitely helped. But yeah, you gather as much information as possible. Then you look at what the person does for a living, the particular part of the market the person is covering, or the part of the financial industry that the person is working on. Then I'm not going to lie, there's a bunch of brainstorming with the help of AI. I think it's a phenomenal tool to find, angles to tackle and really give you the juicy questions that the audience is going to find insightful. And then there's a little bit of reflection, trying to sleep on it, send it to the guest, a bit of back and forth to see if the person is comfortable with the things you selected. A lot of times you forget to mention stuff and the guest is like, oh, why don't we also add this or that? So there's a little bit of iteration, and I tend to have a lot more than what I actually use during the conversation. I tend to prepare roughly 50 questions per episode, and during the episode, probably we cover 4, 5, 8 questions, maybe if we're lucky. But I like it that way. I have them on the back of my mind and in my notes as the structure to follow, and then of course you improvise during the conversation, but already with that base. Very rarely I have questions that I didn't think about before that just pop out, but it can happen. Of course, I'm not close to it.
Sometimes the question is, can you tell me more about it? Because I feel like somebody has something to share. And there's this moment where you feel like they feel the pressure to end the answer and move on to the next one. And I say, I think there's more to it. And and there's always more to it if they want to explore. And I let them navigate it. They're at the helm as much as I am, but it's fun to see.
And when you say it that way with that beautiful voice you have, it sounds almost like a psychologist. Tell me more. How did that make you feel?
Well, I do want to ask you about fixed income over equities, but I do want to mention something that, when we navigate the world, your profession, my profession, our fields, it's about numbers. But what I've learned, people ask me about a single lesson. I don't have a single lesson, but there are many things that come to mind. We think that finance is about numbers, and it is. It gives us a little bit of a framework, a guardrail, but so much of it is about emotion, psychology, feeling, trust, and temperament.
People.
And people. So all of it are expressions of, humanity. And I think, well, I must say that my education, as wonderful as it was and very enjoyable, the topics that had the least to do with finance, I think taught me the most valuable things that make me see things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Psychology or sociology or the aspects of human behavior. You're managing money for people. You have to remember there's a person with a heartbeat behind the portfolio, whether if it's in fixed income or equities. But earning that kind of trust to be responsible for somebody's family fortune, that's not something that happens with an equation. It happens with a feeling. I want to ask you about fixed income over equities. I fell in love with equities. Peter Lynch, I get to own a small piece of a business.
Wait, just 1 second before we move there, because you threw up a big topic there. Before we jump on specific asset classes, I just want to say that 100% agree with what you said. I'm an incredibly huge fan of interdisciplinary knowledge.
Yes.
I think it's, some of the best investors of all time, they read across multiple fields and tried to extrapolate lessons, concepts, ideas, frameworks, mental models, you name it, from one discipline to another. And I think it's amazing, honestly, when you read something that has nothing to do with finance and all of a sudden your brain makes a connection in the most unexpected way, in the most unexpected moment. Like sometimes, I don't know, I'm in the shower or I'm walking, I'm doing something completely random. I'm like, oh man, like this thing that I read about UX or history or biology, like maybe we could try something like this with this angle, with this project I'm working on at the bank. And it's amazing when at least for me, when my brain makes those connections, I find it incredibly fulfilling and energizing, and I absolutely love it. So yeah, I agree very much with what you said. And please, let's go back to the equity versus bond debate now. Sorry for the interruption.
No, I love that. And there's something about learning from different places, different angles, and sometimes looking at the same thing again and again. And when I run into a wall, I just walk away, come back to it, and reading a novel, reading something that has nothing to do with the topic at hand can open a door that we haven't seen before. I don't know how to fully explain it, but I meet people that just understand it. And I think it's something that cannot be exactly taught. Maybe it can be shown. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it, as metaphysical as it sounds.
It's like M dashes and AI.
There you go, right? Once you see it, it's a different world. I want to ask you, so there are two ways, or at least two major ways, to participate in this successful economic growth of the world, right? You can own businesses or you can own their debt, their obligations. I chose one, you chose the other. Tell me about your side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, what a lot of people don't know is that debt is the biggest asset class that exists out there, right? Because virtually every single entity you think of has probably issued debt at some point or another. Not only corporates, by the way, but also governments. It's basically the deepest market in the world, and it's what finances and makes things happen across the globe. So what I think interesting about debt is that it's an asset class that provides visibility over cash flows. And, that's something obviously that may not be interested for everyone, but for a lot of investors, that has great value. The fact that, in theory, when you're going to get paid what, has obviously a certain elegance to it. Of course, you have to avoid defaults. That's obviously the biggest mistake that you can make as a bond investor. But leaving that aside, it's an asset class that definitely has a role to play in most, if not all, investors' portfolios. Of course, there's been a lot of debate around the returns of different parts of bond markets compared versus equities. Equities historically have performed higher rates of return, but of course with higher levels of volatility, right? So to me, they've never been mutually exclusive. They're just been different instruments that each of us can use. But what I really love about fixed income in general and the part of the market I focus, which is credit, is that is a very very comprehensive, very rounded asset class. Because in order to be able to get to that single point of information, which is the recommendation that you're going to give to your clients, so whether to buy, to hold, or to sell, you have to do a lot of preliminary work that comes from two very different worlds. One is the top-down analysis. So in order to talk about bonds, you need to have a view on the economy. You need to have a view about macro, because of course rates is this unique factor that is most decisive when looking at the valuation of a fixed income instrument. But you also need to do bottom-up analysis, right? Like you need to be familiarized with what the company does, the same way as an equity investor would do, understand intimately the business model, the sector it operates in, whether it has a moat or not, and ultimately try to figure out if the company has enough cash or will it generate enough liquidity over the future in order to face its outstanding obligations. So that's something that I always genuinely found incredibly interesting about bonds. On top of that, you have multiple layers to analyze debt instruments. Each of them is a completely different world. When you think about a company like Apple, like it has a couple of stocks listed in a couple of exchanges, but it has multiple bonds outstanding. The extreme case, of course, is financials. When you look at banks, a European bank would have hundreds, if not thousands, of bonds outstanding, and each of them ranks in a different part of the capital structure, and each of them has different features, different coupons, different maturities, different covenants. And as a fixed income advisor, and everyone working in bonds really has to look at each specific icing to understand the intricacies of each of these instruments. And I thought that always has been really, really cool. And talking about the layers that I was alluding to, so you have all these different ways of looking at bonds too. In equity land, you have fundamental analysis, technical analysis. Well, we also have that. We look at issues from the fundamental standpoint. We have technical analysis. In our side of the market, we use mostly relative value analysis. We compare the bond with its existing curve and cap structure against the cap structure and curves of peers, and it's just like multi-dimensional. There's so many layers to it. There's no way of simplifying it, and that's why a lot of people say that bond investors tend to have a very comprehensive view of the world, and I tend to agree. You need to have you need to have a view from the top. You need to have a view from the bottom, and I guess that's what makes it beautiful. But what about you? Tell me about equities. Why do you like them so much?
Well, now I'm starting to like bonds after listening to you.
I told you, the most beautiful asset class.
Well, I think it's to appreciate how big it is, to appreciate how many participants issue debt. And I mean, it's not easy to buy, but you and I could have borrowed money too, and we're still participating in the debt market as well, right? Like when you really think about it, everybody at some point owed money to somebody, right? It's such a human experience, maybe more frequent than owning stocks or thinking about owning businesses. So as a human experience, I think we've all were on one side or the other of the debt phenomenon, of the history that's, thousands of years old. There are records of some sort of an obligation going back. What spoke to me, and I'll go back to Peter Lynch, I had teachers talk to me about the markets, and we did options valuation, pricing, all of those things. And it was right after the internet bubble burst. I'm 45, so I was going to school from 1999 until 2004. And a lot of my teachers, professors, I think lost a lot of money in the market. And they couldn't have a single nice word to say about Amazon that happened to have survived this debacle and became a success story down the road. But I do remember you could get them started talking about any of those companies. And they told me that the stock market is a casino. And I think I had that conviction almost already that this is not the place to go. And I think it can be a casino. But Peter Lynch said you can buy small pieces of businesses. And somehow this very simple phrase spoke to me because I realized I can be a participant in other people's work and success and efforts, owning a single share with a very small amount of money. And I'm treated the same way as the founder. At least that's the aspiration of the system, to treat the minority shareholder the same way if all the rules apply. So it really spoke to me. So I thought I can build a collection of businesses the same way big investors out there. Well, I'll have thousands of dollars. They'll have millions of dollars or billions of dollars. But it's the same concept. So it really spoke to me. And I thought that it's a puzzle worth solving. I don't know if I'm going to beat the market. I wasn't really obsessed about it, but I was aware of the fact that I can read and learn and understand a business to the point that I will feel comfortable owning a handful of shares, maybe more down the road. So I came for the intellectual puzzle that I found rewarding enough, and I stayed for the people that I get to serve. So when I came to New York, I got to see how this way of thinking, which people call value investing. Buffett says all investing is value investing, where you appreciate what you're buying, what you're paying, what you're getting, the price and value. You build a collection of businesses and you hold them long enough for that to matter because they grow, they expand, they become better over time. And you can compound wealth over time. Forget the benchmarks for that. Forget all of the outperformance talk, which I think can get in the way of what you're trying to do. You can grow wealth over time. And, sitting down with clients and seeing their statements from 20 or 40 years ago and seeing the doubling of the assets that preceded my arrival at that firm really opened my eyes. And I thought, it's not just the talk and the math. It's actually happened to people that 2 million became 4, became 8, became 16 or 64 and 128. It does double. I don't know what the market did at the same time, but their assets doubled in a collection of businesses. So that really spoke to me. And I realized that through that kind of work, I can make a difference in people's lives. It's a certain peace of mind. It's a certain optionality. With the clients I work with, wealthy families with, in many cases, multi-generational wealth, the fact that the money is there allows them to act and show up in a world in a completely different way, more at ease, with comfort, with peace. And they might never use that capital. That capital might be already earmarked, dedicated for the next generations. And maybe they also see this money already as something they're just taking care of in this lifetime. But it opened this immense, infinite time horizon in front of my eyes, where I realized I'm not just picking stocks, I'm putting down certain bricks that create a cathedral. And I do go buy those ownerships in a casino. But as Buffett reminded us this year at the Berkshire meeting, you leave the casino and you go build a cathedral. And that cathedral will outlast everything. But unfortunately, we do buy those shares in what feels like a casino sometimes, which can get in the way of what we're trying to accomplish.
Love it. I love the answer. We're slowly getting close to the end of the conversation, but I don't want to close this episode without asking you about AI, which is, of course, the topic of 2026. Everyone and their grandma is talking about it.
Yeah.
Topic that I know is close to your heart, definitely close to mine. Are we all going to lose our jobs, Bogumil? How do you see things?
Short answer is no. No, I think your job and my job is a lot about trust and relationships. I think AI is a tool that can empower us to do a better job, be more thorough. I've had guests on the show who tell me, it doesn't replace the work. It allows you to be more thorough. And just a big picture observation, I'm very curious how you look at it. I've been investing professionally for over 20 years, and I noticed how there was innovation at times. We had better software. I was actually the one that would bring new software to different firms where I was before I launched my own, and with different levels of openness to software or innovation. But they were very gradual changes, really. We put something in spreadsheets, that it had formulas, that it was connected to something, would load the numbers. We still double checked everything. So the change was very incremental, very, very slow. We would use the same model for years. And we were not the only ones. I imagine a lot of people felt that way. But then AI really accelerated the process, and it's built, and to me, it's an acceleration built on acceleration. It improves itself as you go. A static spreadsheet that you built 5 years ago that has everything you need, you tweak it here and there, but AI can revamp the process many times over. And I've been very open to embracing this new phenomenon, and even organizing my own notes and tapping into something that I wrote, years ago that I don't remember writing, all the way to speeding up my process, getting to know a company, still doing the actual, reading and research, but I think it allows me to zoom out, see more, and then zoom in. And sometimes I pull up the recording of an earnings call, and although I have a summary, I want to hear the voice of the person that says it. I want to hear the way the CEO said that this was not a good quarter. I feel like on a human level, the same way people listening to this episode are listening to our voices, I can hear so much. Just one example in how the CEO told me, this was not a good quarter, but we're doing these 3 things to get back on track. I can read it in a transcript, but if I hear it, there's something, a nuance that happens that I can capture, that I think can add a lot of value. But I'm curious about your thoughts.
You're such a romantic, Bogumil.
Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, on my side, I'm quite frankly, I'm still trying to make my mind on this. If anyone that knows me knows that this is the number one topic in my mind all the time. My wife is tired of listening to me rumble about this. I've read a bunch of books. I have kids, and I think a lot about this. About which kind of world are they going to grow in, and whether this is going to change everything for me whilst I work, but also for them, if they decide to join the finance industry or any industry for that matter, really. And I guess my answer changes a lot from one day to another and the amount of hours of sleep I had. So today you caught me on a good day. I slept properly, so I'm going to say I'm an optimist. I think it's a phenomenal tool. I think for those that take the time to roll up their sleeves, put in the reps, understand how this thing works, and stay current by playing around with the new models and whichever softwares and new use cases come up, there will be opportunity. Those that remain oblivious to it and pretend it doesn't exist, or that it's not good just because they used the free version of ChatGPT 2 years ago and they think it hallucinates, then they're probably going to run into trouble at some point. Things are moving fast, very fast, scaringly fast. I think, as you said, we're now using AI to improve itself, meaning it's growing and improving at an exponential rate. And what I think most people don't realize is that the way we think about AI today has nothing to do with AI in 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years down the road. At this pace, I think we simply cannot fathom how things are going to look like. But again, if used properly, it's an extremely powerful tool that makes a lot of the heavy lifting for you, that takes care of the low value adding tasks that, quite frankly, a lot of us don't really enjoy, and frees time for us to spend time on doing what we do best, which is think and try to deliver value for our clients. That being said, one thing for sure, the industry is going to be heavily disrupted. I'm particularly concerned for the young graduates, because of course a lot of the roles that are being replaced by AI are junior positions. I think we're one of the last generations that really spend so much time taking notes, summarizing meetings, and doing presentations in their formative years. I think the way juniors today learn is going to be significantly different to the way we learned. And I don't know. I don't know how things are going to look like in 5 or 10 years. I think those that, again, position themselves as the ones being experts and find relevant and useful use cases with this technology within firms will prevail, and will find valuable jobs, and the rest I am unsure. Some people think we're moving towards universal basic income because eventually the machine becomes better at everything we do, especially white-collar jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a strong possibility of that happening, quite frankly. Some people also think that the jobs related to empathy are the ones that are going to be most shielded or protected from this revolution taking place. So to all the relationship managers listening, you're good. But I'll say there's a caveat to that, which is you're good for now, because I think 30, 40 years down the road, AI is going to have empathy. And I think it's going to be hard to distinguish human empathy from AI empathy at some point, just because it's going to get so good. So I don't know. And maybe to wrap up this long blurb, I'd say that it's good to think about it, but maybe not obsess about it either. Like, I was talking about it with my dad recently, and he said, like, every generation has its challenges. Every generation encounters phenomena that seem disruptive and that could change the world. But at the end of the day, a lot of times things are not white and they're not black, and it's somewhere in between, and they happen gradually. And I'm hoping we're going to find the answer as individuals, but also as humanity. I hope we're going to manage to tackle those challenges as they happen, and that as a human race, let's say, we manage to use this technology in a constructive way to have a better world. And talking about the finance industry specifically, that we use this tool in a responsible way, in a productive way, to add as much value as possible for our clients.
It's beautifully put. I think there are more questions than answers at this point. I'm, on one hand, very excited about what it can do. I think we're moving up the value-added chain to the highest value-added aspect of what we do. I've seen it all, already in the last 20 years. Certain things went away. They're digitized or automated. This is a big leap. I like the point about the junior positions. You and I have learned it the hard way, I would say, when I think about it. I'm not sure how junior positions will evolve and change. I think they'll start learning at a whole different level than I have, at least. Putting things in a spreadsheet is unnecessary. But I do want to highlight one thing that, I don't see doctors often, but when I see a doctor, and I had a visit a few years back, I had to have something taken care of, and I see all the equipment and technology that they have, and I'm very impressed with it, and I'm glad they have it. I think it makes them smarter. But at the end of the day, what I appreciated? That the doctor knew that I was nervous in the same way people get nervous about their money. And he actually grabbed my hand and he said, "I'll be here with you for the entire procedure and you'll be fine. And these are the 3 things we're going to do." And he was there. He made sure that I knew that he was there, and I was put under. I woke up. Anyways, he was there when I woke up, and he said, "You're fine. It's all done. You're waking up." Anyways, that human presence, and you call me a romantic, but maybe a humanist here.
I was gonna say it again. Your words, not mine.
I had moments in this profession, managing money for people for 2 decades, where they want to talk to a person, and maybe the topic and the conversation has immediately nothing to do with money, but everything to do with what they care about. And they just want to know that you hear them, you see them, you feel them, and you're there for them. And I don't think any machine will replace that. I think we'll be more empowered to do more with less. A human is needed at the end of the day. That's my hope. I want to leave it on a more optimistic note if I can.
No, absolutely. And my hope is definitely aligned with yours. Money is a very serious matter, and at the end of the day, as you were saying, it's all about people too. As of today, I would 100% prefer having that doctor or that advisor holding my hand than, a machine with an algorithm behind it that I don't fully grasp or understand. But who knows what's in store? And I think the best thing we can do is just, as I was saying, stay current, stay open-minded, and improvise as we come along. Which brings me maybe to one of my last questions for you. You kind of already touched upon it, but when you have young lads entering the industry, asking you, "Hey, Bogumil, I'm starting my finance journey now. What can I do to have a successful career as you had?" What do you tell them?
I had this undying passion for something I discovered, and I think nothing replaces that kind of passion. When people see the investment profession as a 9 to 5 or whatever, 9 to 7, they will not get as far as somebody that absolutely loves what they do. And I can tell that you love what you do. I love what I do. And if you can tap into that passion, however it expresses itself, are you going to be putting numbers in a spreadsheet like I did? Or are you going to be using AI to navigate that quicker and better? That's absolutely secondary. But if you love what you do, and in my case, and I think in your case, it's not just picking investments, but serving people in such an intimate way, solving a massive problem that they're facing, making sure that they can be at peace about their future, I think there will be need for it. And if you're passionate about it and you stay the extra hour, you'll be way ahead of any competition you can imagine. You can't really compete with a passion of an individual to do something.
Yeah, it's a great answer. It's the same answer I would give to that same question, and the most common answer I get from the people I have on my show, like, you cannot fake that, right? You can try to fake it for a while, but look at you. I mean, several hundreds of episodes. If you don't genuinely like doing, for example, a podcast, you would have never got there. If you didn't genuinely like talking to people, you would have never put all the hours that you've put into this project. And for the finance industry is the same. Like, what I like to say is just find something you feel genuinely passionate about. If passion, is too big of a word, let's say at least something that you feel genuinely interested by, intellectually speaking, and and try to learn as much as possible with a humble and an open mindset, and the rest will take care of itself. But if you find a field where you feel fulfillment, you are already in a good position to outperform versus the rest of the people that are maybe doing it for the wrong reasons.
Exactly. Nothing beats passion. Ignacio, this was so much...
Coming from a Polish romantic, you're like the most Latin of all Polish people I've ever met. I think you're Spanish at heart. Have you done one of those DNA tests? Maybe like a couple of generations ago, you had ancestors coming from the south. Who knows?
And that's the first, but I love the sound of it, Ignacio. So good to spend this hour with you. I'm really grateful we made it happen, and highly recommend all your content to all my listeners. Find Ignacio on LinkedIn, Blunt Dollar, and everywhere else, and just follow his wonderful work. And I can tell you love what you do, and people can feel it.
Likewise, thank you so much for launching this initiative. It was your idea, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I've been a big fan of your work for quite some time now. So for those of you that didn't subscribe to Talking Billions, please do. It's an incredibly insightful show with a very romantic Polish person that really definitely knows how to make finance interesting. So please do subscribe, and also check out Bogumil's Substack. It's great. Lots of more layers and depth around the conversations he has on the podcast, and of course check his LinkedIn too, where he posts stuff a little bit less than what I wish. he was doing. So I hope to see a little bit more of that this year. But thank you for having me. It's been an honor to do this with you, and let's do it again.
We'll do it again.
Let's not wait too long before we try another shot.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Ignacio. You were listening to Talking Billions. We talk about big ideas, big inspirations, big topics. We take on the hardest subject of all, money. But our conversations lead us to an even bigger question: what it means to live a rich life beyond money. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment and follow, subscribe, rate, and share with friends and family. We rely on word of mouth to promote the show. One click for you means the world to us. Thank you. Until next time, your host, Bogumil Baranowski.